YouTube friends, I'm Heidi Villegas with Healing Harvest Homestead, and I am getting ready to do some experimenting in my kitchen with some essential oil distillation and hydrosol distillation. They both go together when you're creating steam distills, but this is a complete experiment because I have only worked with my little Alembic still, which is back here. It's actually the one I'm going to work with today because of the plant matter that I'm using. But I thought I would go ahead and just walk you through what an essential oil still looks like and the parts that you use, and then just talk with you about what I'm going to be doing today and why it's an experiment. So, first off, we have what's called the bowl, and some bowls like this one will have a setup on the bottom that keeps the plant matter off of the bottom because you could potentially burn the plants. But this is where the water goes, and I know some distillers do put plant matter into the bowl with the water, and some don't, and a lot of times that just depends on the plant you're distilling as well. Next up, this is the column, and this is an area where you can see the holes in the bottom, perhaps. This is where you can set your plant matter. Even if you have it in the bowl, you still want plant matter in the column for best results. You don't always have to, but I've actually distilled without the column at all, and it turns out just fine, especially for a hydrosol. Putting the plant matter into the column allows the steam to rise up and just really get into the plant matter that's sitting in here and go to work distilling those essential oils. Next up, we have what's known as the onion. The onion sits on top of the column like this, and as the steam rises up through the column and picks up the constituents of the plant matter that the steam is able to lift, these would be like the volatile oils, the essential oils. It rises up into the onion, and then it's forced into this column up here, this little thin area, and then downward into what's known as the line arm. It's L-Y-N-E. So this is the line arm. It's kind of a gentle little incline downward. And from the line arm, the steam flows into what's known as the condenser. Inside the condenser is what's known as the serpentine, which is a spiral, kind of a column of metal tubes. And so the steam goes into those metal tubes and is forced downward through the condenser. Inside the condenser, you have cold water flowing in, or ice even, and flows in right here. So it's not entering the portion of the serpentine where the steam is. It's going into this condenser area. The cold water hits the column of the serpentine, and it cools that steam down incredibly and turns it back into liquid. So what happens here is, pretend this is all hooked up, my hydrosol is going to come out of this end right here, and over here, this is where cold water flows in, this is where cold water flows out, totally separate from the serpentine. This portion here where the hydrosol flows out is part of the serpentine, but the steam is inside. So that's essentially the basic instructions for how an alembic still works. You will have a thermometer up here. This is where it goes, and you can keep tabs on the temperature of it. This one is actually meant to be used outdoors. It's quite big for a kitchen setup, although this size I probably could use it on my stove, but I have never done that. So I'm so excited. This is the one I'll be using starting this spring when the sap flows in the trees. So my first project is going to be to distill some Thuja plicata, which is Western red cedar, and I'm very excited about that's going to be my first project this coming spring, among others. I'm planning on distilling a lot this summer, so I'll be sharing some more with you about all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and set this one aside. I'm going to just take it apart here so that it can air out and dry fully in there. Another thing I want to just mention about the column is it's removable, obviously, but it is on this little hinge here, and if you want to, you can simply just keep it hooked up like this and then distill just with this, with your column over here. It's also handy because you can open it up during the distillation process or afterward if you need to, and it's just really easy to clean. So most Alembic stills will have a column set up like that, where you can open and close it. So, right. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about the plants really fast. So there's, as always in the herbal world, there's controversy about should you use fresh or dried plant matter. And I've heard that you can use either, and it really does depend on the plant. Sometimes you want to use fresh and sometimes you want to use dried. And in the case of lavender, which I'm going to be working with today, I am going to use dried lavender. This is an experiment. I've never distilled dried matter before. But I was reading this book that was written by two German chemists, and they are essential oil experts. And they say in their book that you can use and should use dried plant matter, and you will extract more essential oil. So honestly, common sense would tell you that there's going to be more essential oil in the fresh plant matter because, as we know, when plants dry, the chemicals evaporate. But in the case of, let's just say, an herb like peppermint and lavender as well are full of aromatic oils even after they're dried. And according to these chemists, you're going to yield much more essential oil using the dried plant matter than the fresh. So I'm going to be doing some experiments with that this summer too. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and use some dried lavender. And what I have here is I've got some combination lavender. Some of it's, I harvested it myself. Some of it I purchased from a friend of mine. Her name is Stephanie over at Running Springs Ranch in California. She's got an amazing lavender farm there. And her essential oils are literally, as far as, they only work with lavender, but best lavender essential oil I've ever experienced. In fact, I can't pick up a bottle without smelling it. So I love lavender. It's really good for your skin. It's soothing, it's healing. It's also excellent for burns. It's wonderful as a calming and soothing and relaxing essential oil. And the hydrosol is also rather aromatic too. So even if you don't yield a whole lot of essential oils out of this, a batch, you're still going to have some really, really wonderful hydrosol to work with. And you can use that in soaps and lotions and just to spray directly on your face, or working with babies. You should not really use essential oils topically to a great extent on infants. So the hydrosol is really a wonderful alternative. So this is what we're going to do. And here I've got about 14 ounces of lavender buds. According to these, the chemists who wrote this book, these chemists suggest 2 cups of water per pound of plant matter. Now, lavender is extremely dry, or light. It's extremely lightweight. It doesn't take up a lot of, it doesn't weigh a whole lot, but it takes up space. And honestly, 2 cups, even in my little tiny baby, this is the bowl for my little 3-liter still. It's tiny. This is not going to, 2 cups is going to boil away really fast in this. So I'm going to actually double the amount of water to start off, and then we'll see how this goes. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start off with, in fact, I might even triple it and start off with about 12 ounces of water. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to get my little still set up, much like I just showed you with my larger still, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So just to recap what we're looking at here, this is an experiment. I have no idea if it's going to turn out, number one. Number two, I know that fresh lavender can be totally used to make essential oil because I know some people who do that, and it turns out beautifully. Number 3, I am experimenting with dried lavender because I need to use this up. It's not old, but it's getting to where I won't be able to use it viably in teas and things like that medicinally, so I'm going to go ahead and distill it, and we'll just see how this goes. The fourth experiment I'm doing is I'm trying to see if I can yield any essential oil at all out of such a small distillation. I want to point out that in this book, they do use a different still than I have. They use something called the Leonardo, and I think they created it themselves, and they're modeling it after Leonardo da Vinci's still, whereas I'm using an Alembic still, which is extremely old-fashioned and very, very traditional. It's a traditional form of distillation, but I have a feeling, I'm hoping, cross fingers, that they're going to work similarly, and I will yield, hopefully, some essential oil from this, so we'll see. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pour this bag, because it's fresher lavender, into the column. And again, this is about 7 ounces of lavender. The bag says 4 ounces, but I actually weighed it, and it is about 7 ounces. She really packed it in there for me, which I appreciate. And I'm just going to go ahead and give it a good little press. So when the steam rises into the column, it actually really hits that plant hard and wilts it. So this is going to shrink down really fast. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of this lavender to the bowl. Or the bowl, I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of this lavender to the bowl. I can get it all in there. Okay, I think my house is going to be smelling really good. Alrighty, and now I'm going to go ahead and add some water. So this is 2 cups of water, and you can see this is quite a lot of lavender. It's nearly filling this 3-liter bowl, and this is not enough water. It's not even going to be close. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little more. I'm going to go ahead and add 4 additional cups here. Let's see how that feels. I think it's going to boil off pretty fast, so I'm actually going to even add a little bit more. And this, again, this is the fun thing about experimenting with herbs in your kitchen. The thing with herbalism, especially if it's folk herbalism, nothing has to be completely exact. You can play around a lot. Now, with essential oil distillation, I think the same holds true, but you know, what you're looking for with an essential oil distillation is your essential oil yield. So you want to try to maximize that, of course, because you're using a lot of plant matter to get your essential oils. But in my case, like I said, I'm working with older lavender. It's not super old, but I want to go ahead and get it used. And also, it's an experiment, so I'm learning from this right along with you. Okay, I'm going to actually, I feel like I've got 4 more cups here, and the lavender in this bowl can move around at this point, but I think I'm going to stop it right there. So I added a total of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've added about 9 cups of water. So, you know, I may not get any essential oil out of this for a number of reasons. There's a number of factors that might be involved in that, but we'll see. We'll see if we do or not. Either way, I'm going to have some beautiful hydrosol to make lotions and things and and to work with, or maybe to use for some soap. All right, I'm going to get it set up on the stove. All right, so here we are. We're all set up. Honestly, I would prefer to do this outside. It can create a big mess, but I just want to talk about a couple of things here. So this is my little Alembic. This is a 3-liter, and this is the temperature gauge. It just allows you to kind of know if you're getting into a danger zone or not. And really, I haven't figured that out yet. So, and here we go. We've got our bulb. We've got the column. Both are pretty well packed with the lavender buds. And I've got the water down here. Again, here's the onion through the tube. This is the line arm and down. And the steam is going to be basically forced into this condenser. I've got snow in here. I'll show you what this looks like. Maybe I can move this. and maybe not. This is the Serpenteen. There you go. You can see why it's called a serpentine. It just kind of like a snake. And here we go with this side of it. So this is, if I had this set up to a pump system, which is ideal for working inside, but I can't, this still is so small, I can't find a pump that is gentle enough that it doesn't spray water everywhere or kick my tubes off. So normally water would be input here, cold water, and then warm water comes out the bottom, and here I've got it going into a tub down here. And this is the piece that comes off of the Serpenteen, and this is flowing down into a separator. So this is a separator. It's going to catch the hydrosol, and I will show you what I do with that when this whole process is done, because this is where you separate the hydrosol from the essential oil if you're fortunate enough to have enough oil to separate. So here we go. We're going to just watch this little process. I'm estimating this is going to take about an hour or so, but it may not be quite so long. So stay tuned. All right, let's just go ahead and check in here. I also didn't tell you about this. These are the seams where the different pieces of the Alembic fit together. And so you can wrap this with electrical tape like I've done here, or you can use a solution of rye flour and water, which is what they actually used to do in the olden days. And then here's the temperature gauge. Again, I'm not sure if this temperature gauge really works that well, but you can see it's got Fahrenheit and Celsius on the gauge, and we all know that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, and right now it's just showing that it's at about 65-ish almost, and I can hear the water churning around in there. So I suspect we're going to start getting some steam in a moment. The snow still has not melted, which means that Serpenteen still isn't hot. So there's no steam being forced in there quite yet. So we'll just wait and we'll check in a few more minutes. All right, it's been a couple more minutes since we checked in, and here we go. This is my second cup of snow I've put in. You can see it rapidly melting against the Serpenteen. And here, I don't know if you can see that, but you can see the little pulses of the distilled solution, the distilled lavender water coming out, and it's starting to go into the condenser. This is not going to take as long as I thought, obviously. So I'm going to stand here and continue putting more snow into the condenser, and we'll see what happens. I just want to say it's been maybe 30 seconds at this point, longer than when I just checked in, but it is smelling so good in here, like lavender, of course. It's very, very pretty. So I'm very excited about this. I'm feeling very hopeful about learning to distill essential oils a lot better. One other thing I want to point out here is that the temperature gauge has reached 100, and I am getting a lot of steam. In fact, some little bits of steam are even able to escape from the, oh boy, from the electrical tape. So, yay. Okay, look at this. I am totally stoked. That on top is a layer of the essential oil going into the separator. So I am really thrilled about this. One thing that the chemists who wrote the book I read mentioned was that in a separator like I've got here, it can sometimes be the case where the essential oil adheres to the glass. So that's actually another thing I'm going to be testing out, is to see how much essential oil I'm going to have to worry about losing with this method. But it's looking good so far. So I haven't been keeping track time-wise. I probably should have timed this whole experiment, but I'm estimating it's probably been about 20 minutes since I last checked in and showed you the essential oil, and we're still going strong. It sounds like there's still plenty of water in the bowl. The snow is working amazingly well. In case you're wondering why I'm using snow, in the condenser. It's because what's happening is the steam is very, very hot coming, you know, out of the still and entering the serpentine. And that snow cools that serpentine down, so when the steam hits the surface of it inside, it condenses. And that's what causes the liquid to flow out of this portion right here. And here's what we're looking at right now. You can see how cloudy that is, and that's actually a good sign because what that is essential oil that is making that water cloudy. And so the decision point comes is, you know, I need to make a decision about when I feel like the lavender buds inside the column and the bowl are spent, and when it's time to let up. Because if I keep pouring, you know, if I use up all the water that I poured into the still to start this, I'm going to have a weaker hydrosol and potentially less essential oil that I can actually extract out. And one of the reasons is because you can see the surface area on top of the water is getting wider. I think this is a 500 milliliter container. So I just need to decide, you know, when I want to stop at this point. And then I can measure out the essential oil and experiment with how much I get. But you can see that, you can see it starting to spread across the top. That essential oil layer is definitely thinner at this point. So again, fun little experiment. I love experimenting with my herbs and my plants and my flowers and making things, and this is just one more thing to try. Okay, I've turned off my stove, and I'm just gonna go ahead and let the rest of that snow melt in here. You can see water is still coming out, and water has pretty much stopped coming into the separator. And I'm going to go ahead and let this cool down, and then we're going to go ahead and take a look at the plant matter inside, and that way I can see if it's truly spent and also how much water is still left in there. I'm going to make a guess, a hypothesis, that it's quite a good amount of water at this point still, just because I didn't yield a whole bunch in my separator. There's probably about 1.5 cups in there is my guess. So we will see. Okay, so I just took the lid off of the Alembic. I'm busy cleaning things up over here. And these lavender buds, although they're steamed, are disturbingly dry, which tells me that I probably could have let this go a little bit longer. But let's go ahead and we'll take this off, and I'm going to see what's down here in the bowl and how much water there is and what that looks like. Here's what the lavender buds look like down in the bowl, and I can tell you there is very, very little water, if any, left in here at this point. So in terms of that, I do believe I got this off the stove at the right time. So there we are. Now I'm thinking that I'm going to go ahead and do some note taking and some reflecting on this whole process because there are a lot of factors to consider. Number one is how much lavender I actually used, which was probably a lot for this size Alembic still. And also how much water I didn't use or did use. I mean, I think I probably, for this amount, should have maybe used a little bit more water, but it was quite full. So this is a learning experience, like I said. And you guys, you know, I just want to say, as an herbalist, and this is especially for my students, and you guys hear me talk all the time as we learn together about the power and the process of experimenting with the herbs in a number of different ways, and then you reach your own conclusions, and that is what makes you so powerful as an herbalist. So anyway, this is where we're at right now with the lavender, and let's go ahead and come on over here. Here's where we're at with the separator. You can see it's very, very cloudy still, and so it's probably going to take a few hours, I think, for this to separate out. What ended up happening, and this is typical from what I've read, is that as the hydrosol flowed into the separator here, it was flowing quite quickly toward the end, and I think that probably mixed up the essential oils very, very well into the liquid. So now we just have to wait for it to separate out. I do have a very thin line of essential oil there on top. I don't know if you can see that. And all this brown is going to be the essential oil particles that will rise to the top. So at that point, when it's all separated, and it may even take until tomorrow morning, the way this is looking, but at that point, we'll go ahead and strain off the hydrosol from the bottom, and then we'll have whatever's left will be the essential oil, and I'll bottle that up into a little 5 milliliter bottle, unless I get more than 5 milliliters, which would be very exciting. But we'll see. We'll see how this goes. All right. So far, so good, though. I think so far it's been a success, relatively. At least I've got some beautiful hydrosol coming. And I will show you the rest of the process probably in the morning. Okay, it's next morning. The hydrosol has been sitting in the separator all night long. I did read that you're supposed to let your hydrosol just rest for at least 12 hours, and that allows everything to separate. What's interesting is that it didn't really separate much more. So I've got kind of a cloudy hydrosol here. I actually strained some of it off. I'll show you how I do that. But it smells really good. It's a very beautiful, strong hydrosol. So I feel like there's a lot of essential oil in this hydrosol that is just dispersed, and it is not coming out. And I'll show you this in just a second, but there is still a thin layer of essential oil at the top. I'm going to grab my phone and show you that. So you can see here, there's just a really thin layer of the hydrosol, and even down here on this one, you can see at the top, there's a thin layer across the top. And you know, the still that I used for this little project is a really small still. It's tiny. And therefore, I'm thinking the amount of essential oil I'm ever going to yield from that still is likely to be very, very small. I'm still going to finish straining this off, and I might play around with trying to gather the essential oil from the top, but honestly, I think I'm just going to enjoy using this just like it is, because it smells amazing, just amazing. So let's go ahead and talk about next steps here and how to use it. All right, so the separator let me scoot this over here. There's a little valve here that you can turn that's got some holes in it, and you can just allow the liquid to pour right out, so it's pretty handy. And it is set up in such a way that not a whole lot can come out. Oh gosh, goodness. I wanted to stop it right there because I'm going to show you a little teeny tiny bit of essential oil that is in there, and it's pretty interesting. You can get it really pretty darn close to to the essential oil. If I were going to guess how many milliliters I have here, I'm going to say it's definitely less than 1. 1 milliliter is approximately 15 to 20 drops of essential oil, and what I've got here is possibly 5 or 6 drops that I can legitimately see in the separator. So it's small. And that's okay, because like I said, this was an experiment using this Alembic still with lavender, and I've got my larger still, and it's 10 liters. I'm going to be definitely messing around with that this summer. This gives me a lot of hope in that I can actually make my own essential oils from plants that I grow and gather from my yard. All right, I hope you enjoyed this little experiment with a 3-liter copper Alembic still and a distillation of lavender. And if you want me to do more of these kinds of videos, just let me know. And by the way, you do not need a still to distill at home. I do have a video that goes over how to use kitchen equipment to distill a hydrosol. You're not going to get essential oils this way. Again, it's going to be just a real thin layer on top, but you will get beautiful hydrosols. So I'll link to that above here and also below in the description. All right, I will talk with you later. I'm Heidi Villegas with Healing Harvest Homestead, natural living at its best, and I hope you will subscribe.